All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Puget Systems podcast. This week we're joined by Edd Dawson-Taylor, what is Instructor and CG Supervisor at CGPro, kind of an online school for virtual production. I always like to start off. Edd, go ahead and give yourself a little intro of who you are and what you do, a little background and stuff.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on here today. It's a pleasure to be here. My name's Edd Dawson-Taylor. I am founder and instructor at CGPro. CG Supervisor from the visual effects industry. I've been doing that for about 15 years or so, been lucky to work on some cool movies, including my childhood dream of Jurassic World and things like Lion King and Jungle Book and Harry Potter and lots of other things as well, going back from my software days, moving into visual effects, lots of VR and commercials and theme parks, all kinds of different things within CG. But I'm a generalist and an recovering ex-programmer.
I like that. I've dabbled a little bit with software development back in my kind of high school / early college days, and I can feel where the recovering part is definitely. Yeah, true. It's tough.
I still do it. I still like doing it.
Right. Oh, that's good. Right on. So I'm really sorry. So as I've kind of gone through this journey of interviewing people in this industry, I've come to realize that virtual production encompasses a lot more than what people kind of generally think of it. And we kind of mentioned this just before the stream, how you had mentioned like Avatar and Lion King. Those are, I suppose, behind the scenes considered to be virtual production sort of films, where maybe the audience would think of them as more almost computer animated. Avatar is kind of bridging that sort of weird fuzzy line in between. Can you kind of give us a little bit of an explanation, a little broader sense of what all encompasses virtual production?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. Really, it's in my opinion a necessary name, a label for a kind of point in time in which a lot of things have evolved and crystallized at the same time to enable us to do production in quite a different way than we were before. But essentially, they're all add-ons to things that have been done for a very long time. Thinking about the Mandalorian type of thing that goes back to a technique began in 1934 using rear projection. It just happens that now we can do it with tons more control over what's in the background. But very, very old techniques that have been built on top of for a long time. And it's really this kind of moment where the software, the hardware, the skill sets have all converged to be able to do what we now are calling virtual production, which essentially is really production in the same way that we've been doing it for a long time. But the importance of it, and it is a very new moment, really a lot of it hovers around being able to use the power of game engines, which have really graduated now into being able to incorporate very high fidelity environments, very high quality rendering, and to be able to achieve photorealism in camera or off camera as well. There's a number of things which it really brings together: game engines, real-time engines, motion capture, those two things, being able to steer cameras around in the virtual world, move characters around in the virtual world, and do it all in real time. And the real advantage of doing that, because some of these things build on top of what was considered previs before. Now previs is kind of being called virtual production in some senses. Traditionally, previs was done on people's desks in a slow, frustrating way for the filmmakers. Now the filmmakers can actually jump in and be hands-on and move cameras around and even move things around. So the speed of iteration really is the massive upgrade here, because you can actually have, like we did in Lion King, have all the filmmakers in the same room together, making decisions and making changes at the same time, instead of having to ship them off to a different building, different company, and wait and maybe get the Chinese whistles effect by the time it comes back in dailies. Now you can do all of that in the same space and time. It's much faster. It's more like the kind of rapid engineering or agile workflow that's been applied to filmmaking. So it's an important name, but I think it's thrown around so much that and it may not exist forever as a label, because there's so many things that it encompasses. People are calling virtual production kind of everything nowadays, which is, I think it's a useful term, definitely. And where it will go from here, I don't know, but it incorporates all kinds of things from previs, post-viz, tech-viz, in-camera visual effects, and final pixel production, VCam, virtual camera, simulcam, and there's so many bits to it, and I think people always tend to think of it as being the more publicized kind of popular visions of it, things like The Mandalorian, and there's so many other things that happen within what's called virtual production. I know I don't always call it virtual production just because I feel like I'm not sure how permanent that name's going to be.
Well, yeah, it definitely feels like it isn't. We've internally here we've had a similar sorts of conversation as because it involves so many different aspects of like filmmaking or just creation of that sort of sense, that we've had trouble kind of categorizing like our systems. Like, okay, well, what is a virtual production workstation? Well, that depends on what you're doing. What part of the flow that are you doing? Is it like you said, previs? Okay, well, that's almost more of like game development machine or environmental art sort of a thing. It changes just depending on where on the pipeline you are. And that kind of leads me to my next interesting kind of thought. You said you've been in this kind of for about 15 years, and prior to our stream, you had mentioned how you had worked on Unity and had built some of these kind of proprietary tools. Can you kind of speak a little bit on how things have changed over those years?
Sure, yeah. I've been using game engines going back quite a long way. I said I used to be a software engineer, and before I was a VJ, and that was really my journey into computer graphics, was doing visuals in nightclubs in the 90s in London. It was a great way of being able to get things in front of people, experiment. It was really cool, and definitely started. It was cool. Yeah, I still, if I get the chance to do it, still, I love doing that. Putting graphics to cool things to music is some of my favorite things to do. But yeah, definitely dabbled with game engines back then, and used some really early game engines. I was part of a group called the Sancho Plan for quite a while back in London, which was a group of people, frustrated VJs, that wanted to create something with a storyline instead of just random graphics. And we did experiment with game engines. We found that they didn't look good enough at the time, so we did a lot of pre-rendered stuff there. But it was a conscious choice to do that because we wanted control over the look, and it wasn't really ready. Flashing forward to now, where if the state that we're in now was true then, we would have definitely used 3D engines. But we did play with them, and we had some installations. We did an installation in a place called Ars Electronica in Austria. They run a festival every year, and it's a fairly well-known kind of SIGGRAPH type thing.
Okay.
Slightly different than that, but that was they had a big cave environment with a giant wall projected on by 8 projectors onto the wall and the floor, and that was all run in a game engine. And we were doing it stereoscopic, so we kind of had to run it in a game engine. It was called Virtuals. I don't know if it even exists anymore. But anyway, the long preamble to, I've been using game engines for quite a long time, alongside obviously offline tools and doing visual effects, which has been most of the work that I've done. The last 5-6 years, I've started to concentrate more on real time, essentially by luck, finding my way into the Jungle Book where they were using Unity. But by then I'd already been using Unity to do some other stuff. We created a VR app with my old studio that we ran for a while. We did some HoloLens work and a bunch of different things that were in Unity. But that was like the first movie experience I'd had with the game engine. And some people have been experimenting with that before already in previous companies, using it for previs. But this was really, the Jungle Book was really the first time, because Avatar was more motion builder. Jungle Book was really kind of first big use of a game engine to be the thing that did the rendering for the previs and brought in MOCAP and did it all at the same time. Even though on Avatar they'd done a lot of similar things, they ran it mostly through Motion Builder.
Okay.
And we had Unity, which had more features, and they built tools for it, which, as I was saying, kind of were born and died with the movie. And then The Lion King again was Unity. Those tools were recreated again. It was a different company. I was actually working with DD on Jungle Book, Digital Domain, and then NPC on Lion King. So different company, different tools. By the end of that, that was when Epic jumped in to see what was going on in The Lion King and really fell in love with it and just decided to really get behind it. And then using The Mandalorian as a production test bed for really implementing all of that into Unreal Engine. And since then, it's fortunately not lived and died, born and died with every movie. It now gets to compound, which is, I think, really where we've seen the massive difference now that everything has really progressed since then, and it builds on top of itself. So really, I think no, it shouldn't underemphasize the role that Epic played in that, because they care. They took it on. They put a tremendous amount of effort into listening to what was needed on the film sets and doing it and providing the tools for free to people, so that that lots of people can have access to it. And it's not just like Lion King. It's all right if you're on the Lion King set with a team of engineers that are making the stuff. You can play, but it was not available to anyone else in the world at that time. Now anyone with a good enough computer can run Unreal Engine, and it's even without the computer. Now you can rent computers in the cloud now for relatively low cost and have a go. You don't even really need the computer anymore. There's never been a time like this before, and we're only seeing it pick up pace. I think with now the amount of popularity it's got, it's pushed out into all these other industries. The amount of development is increasing, and the I don't know, the pace of it seems like it's picking up. Being a person that teaches it, it's like hard to keep up with the pace of the innovation that's going on. But it's very exciting.
Oh man, yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking again, as I've spoken with other people who've kind of dabbled into this space or who are up to their eyeballs in it, it does seem like in the last few years it's really just taken off. You have, and I love seeing the a sort of breadth of or variety of usage in this. You have everything from like these crazy, LED volumes where they're almost massive warehouses full of these LED panels, or you have something as simple as somebody wrapped their bedroom in green screen material and they're doing it that way, or tracking, using Vive trackers and things and to move it into 3D space and all of this stuff. I love seeing all of these different, like everything from these DIY hack things, and it reminds me even the years ago when people were hacking the Xbox Kinect to do like motion capture and things like that. I'm starting to realize, like you'd said, that virtual production we've been doing this for a long time, but without necessarily the label. And I'm thinking, wow, yeah, that's super true. There's all these interesting solutions that people have had over the years. That's really, really neat.
Yeah, we were talking about this last night. I was talking with Brian Pohl from the fellowship at Epic Games, saying that it feels like that moment at the beginning of the kind of Star Wars era of new things being invented in visual effects. That George Lucas was really, really on top of the innovation at that stage and wanted to make things better, for special effects better in movies, and then understanding the digital aspect of that and really getting behind that and building tools like Edit Droid and various things that were necessary for computer graphics to exist back then. And but a lot of it was, I mean, he already had a reasonable sized company by the stage that the R&D lab split off and became Pixar. But before that, it was like a bunch of people effectively hacking their way forwards in a more of a kind of garage environment, trying to figure this stuff out and making cool stuff. And it feels like we're in that kind of a time again, where in visual effects everything got kind of figured out after a certain number of years. Not that there weren't advances happening, but the pace, the innovation curve kind of leveled off a little bit, because they figured out a lot of things, hair and water and the complicated effects had been figured out. Now it's interesting to kind of going back through all of that all over again in real time, because you have to reinvent it all to make it run in real time. And now, but also because all these tools are being figured out and built by individuals, and a lot of the tools are freely available. There's a lot of individuals who are trying this stuff. It's not just the domain of these big companies with large budgets, and I'm excited to see, for that reason, where the next kind of cool Star Wars type thing is going to come from, because it could very well come from somebody you've never heard of before, who's been working away for years on their stories, and now they're able to get them out. It's a really exciting time.
Me too. I think I agree. I think that is the part that kind of gets me the most jazzed is like you said, the barrier to entry is really low. Anybody with a half decent computer and enough time on their hands can really produce some incredible stuff. Even just the other day, our own guy Matt Bach was playing around with deep face live. Like deep fake stuff used to take, you got to at least a weekend worth of training and all these different samples and stuff just to kind of make it work. And he had it. I mean, it's still weird looking and stuff. It's not perfect, but it was live. It's right there. It's happening from camera to the output right now. And he has a fairly reasonable system, modest, I should say, and it's not unreasonable for just about anyone to kind of get into this and really start making some really interesting things. It's so cool. We're so excited about this stuff.
Yeah,
I want to
there's
grab
some other stuff like in the machine learning realm, like MOCAP. It's traditionally was very expensive. You rent a stage for tens of thousands of dollars a day, in some cases. It's expensive, inaccessible to people. But now there's cheaper suits coming out that are allowing people for a few $1,000s to do MOCAP, and on top of that, some of the machine learning MOCAP that are starting to emerge, that's starting to become quite good, where you don't need a MOCAP suit at all. You can just use cameras and do MOCAP, and then if that's affordable enough, then all of a sudden you've got what literally was only possible if you were in a big facility with millions of dollars, is now available to the individual.
Yeah.
So it means there's going to be a lot of stuff generated. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of noise and signal, and there'll be a lot of things that are experiments, and that's really important part of the process, I think, to not to feel like you can just try this stuff out, see if it works and what does it do, and try and fail and learn from it, and then there'll be those emergent cases where something brilliant comes out of it. And you're already seeing it with people doing incredible things, like you said, with a patch of green material. They can't even necessarily afford enough green material to fill a room, but just enough to cover the area they need. And using Blender and Unreal and some of these really free tools, they could do things that we needed so much equipment to do before. Like thinking back to the beginning of my career when I was leading a commercial and doing a car commercial, and the amount of time when I put my renders on the farm, which is a medium-sized farm, not a huge one, but medium-sized. They were telling me that it was going to be a week before I get my renders back, and I remember telling my producer that and watching his face change, thinking about what he was going to tell the client. I'm like, it can't be a week. We can't have that. Like that feedback loop is not good enough, So I had to do all these things to make it more efficient. And like, okay, it's 3 days now, but literally looking back on that, what we can see in Unreal 4, not even in Unreal 5, it looks better than that did, and comes back in instantly in a 60th of a second, as opposed to a week.
Right.
It's just crazy to me that we're at that point, and so it's so exciting. I think it's reinvigorated the careers of a lot of people who've been in visual effects for a long time. The excitement around not just the render times, but the collaboration potential of all of this, because it's bringing the pipeline together, where this was this disconnected pipeline where people would not really communicate from one part of the pipeline to the other, and certainly from production to post, not much at all. But now you can bring the whole thing together, and it's real. It's really I think breathing tremendous amount of life into that world, which has always been very exciting to me, but never as exciting as it is now.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I've heard stories like that too. Like it used to be, you'd record a shot and then you'd have to send it off to the VFX person, and then they'd come back and say, okay, well, I kind of done what you asked. What do you think? And then it's like a back and forth. And now, kind of like you were saying, now your VFX person is right there. The director can see on the little screen what it's gonna look like, practically as a finished product in almost real time. And that's, yeah, super cool. I want to touch on this
Yeah.
question from YouTube. Emray Designs was asking, what is the most challenging part? And then I guess we'll kind of expand on that, or actually maybe kind of focus a little bit. But I guess just of what is the most challenging part of your work for CGPro?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean,
To
I
kind
could
of
say the most
completely
challenging
shift.
part of running a school is probably not something that would be massively interesting to the listeners, but I could talk about the on the virtual production side,
Sure.
or the actual artist side of doing things. I'm still active as an artist and supervisor and consultant, so that I think really in some it's it's interesting. Like in some ways, the most challenging part is what it's always been, which is um, the story, and nothing to do with the tools at all. Like I think just in a big picture sense, I think that what was true for visual effects is again true for virtual production. That all of these things are just tools.
Mhm.
They're incredible tools, and we are in the most exciting time in computer graphics I've ever known.
That's cool.
But at the same time, what we're doing is the same. We're trying to tell stories to inspire people and create some sort of entertainment or transformational experience. That's the thing we've been doing since we were sitting around fires and telling stories. It's just that the storytelling has got more elaborate. I think one of the more challenging things, which is maybe not the answer um, that they might have been looking for, but they're like really just remembering that the story and the idea is the most important part, and not getting too consumed by the tools. But the thing is, you have to learn the tools to make them be able to disappear for you to think of the creativity. Um, there's several answers to that question. I think I could give one of them would be that is just don't let um, the kind of fancy new tools that exist detract from what is the most important part, which is doing something that's worth putting in front of people, or creating a cool story that's got heart and soul, that really touches people's souls. That's I think it can be a real challenge to focus on the technique and the tools so much that you ignore that part a bit more than you should. But certainly within the tools, um, there's a lot of challenges within that. I think one of them being keeping up with the latest stuff, because that's all in this period of rampant change, and really keeping up with the latest stuff, which no, obviously that's what large part of what we do as a school. We help people keep up to date or jump into the industry in the first place. But I think keeping up with the tools certainly is challenging. It's challenging for us too, because the pace of innovation has increased, and it's got even harder to keep up with them. But I do the same things that I recommend to everyone else that comes and
Mhm.
studies with us, which is have good mentors. one of our mentors is Epic Games. They help us keep up to date, and they're very, very good with their training partners in that way. They help us tremendously. So we go through the same thing in trying to keep up to date and make sure you're on top of the latest tools and trends. But yeah, I mean, all the old challenges are all still there. Basically, these tools have presented a new way of working and collaborating and producing material. But I think all of the old challenges that are all still there. They all still exist. It hasn't made them go away. It's helping bring people together and make the speed of iterating in the creative part of the process at the beginning now be able to exist across the whole production cycle. But yeah, I think some of those traditional challenges, most of them, in fact, are still there. The challenge of finding good people with the right skills and the right temperament to be able to work in these kinds of environments is quite challenging. And because it's so new, there's not that many people who know the tool itself, but then on top of that have the experience in filmmaking to understand how to use it, and on top of that, the temperament to be able to work on a dynamic movie set and not kind of buckle under the stress that happens on those movie sets, which is the stress being a good thing and a bad thing. For me, it's been incredibly focusing when I've been in those environments. But it's challenging for some people, and I think encapsulating all of that together for someone who's going to be on set, I think, is one of the more challenging things for an individual. For a company, finding those people is the challenge, because this is a new skill set that's emerging. It's leveraging on top of old skill sets, but it is new, and I think finding those. So for the people out there who want to get into this, it's a great time. There's so much opportunity because of that lack of supply and the high demand. There's a great opportunity to jump in now, where in the past it was hard, and still is hard, to get into high-end visual effects and computer graphics. That hasn't necessarily changed, but because of this demand increase, the people are somewhat lowering the standards a little bit, just because they need people. And that's not to say that when you've got two options, you don't have much choice but to, if you need two people, take those two people. Whereas before, if there was 1,000 options and you needed two people, it was incredibly difficult for the other 998 to even be seen and heard. So there's a good moment right now because of some of those challenges in the industry of finding good people and nurturing them. It's a bit of a reset. We're training a lot of people who've been in business for twice as long as I have, but they don't know this part of it, so they need to come and retrain. And for that reason, it's really helped to kind of level the playing field in a lot of ways. There are some of the people who've been in it a long time bring with them the tremendous amount of experience that they already have, which is really important, and not to be understated. But there is, because sort of at this point nobody knows how it works. It's been a great leveler, and I think that's great. It's really encouraging the new generation, and it's exciting to get into something where the doors don't feel closed. There's a lot of mobility at the moment, and that's another part of why it's exciting. It's yeah. So I don't know if that was the right answer, but that's some of my answers that I would give to that
I
question.
like it. No, I think that's good, and I mean, it highlights other challenges too, like. But so no, I think that was good. I think you covered it good. I'm curious. So Unreal Engine is traditionally, like you've been saying, is like a kind of a game engine, and Unreal has put a tremendous amount of effort into kind of pivoting it, not away from, but like expanding, I suppose, it into these sort of other industries. From the school standpoint, have you found that there are a lot of people moving from video games or video game design in trying to learn this other way of using these tools, or?
Yeah, it's a good question. There are people doing that,
Mhm.
definitely. There's I mean, going back to The Lion King again, in that moment, there was no virtual production, or at least it was possible. The term had been coined, but it wasn't popular, and it certainly wasn't known by the public outside of this, the little kind of community, the computer graphics community. So yeah, I think at that point, finding people was finding virtual production artists was tough. It was tougher. Now there are people who have crossed the divide from visual effects, and from games and from filmmaking as well. And I'd say those are the sort of major pools of people who have crossed over and get these breakthrough cases where people feel like a change. They want to do something a little differently. Maybe they've been in production. They want to be in a different area of production. This is a new, exciting mode that we're in. So production professionals might want to skill up on that. So definitely seeing those people training up. Also, visual effects artists who either feel like they see the writing on the wall and that this skill set is taking over, or if they make it left behind if they don't learn it, those kinds of things, because it is supplementing a lot of the visual effects process, even if it's not really necessarily taking over all the rendering or getting rid of all of the other tools that are still very much used. um, and the games, so sorry, going back to the Lion King example, they predominantly they were fishing from art department, visual effects, and games, and I kind of
Mhm.
came into it from the visual effects angle. And even before that, Jungle Book, it kind of felt like a risk going into that movie. It was like people I knew who were in visual effects were somewhat resistant to going into it because
Oh,
it was like a new thing. Nobody really knew what it was. No, we were doing a remake of a Disney film. Nobody knew if it was going to be popular or not, or if this was just like putting the career on pause to learn something that may be a fad and maybe going away. I mean, it was hard for them, I think, to find people, but I think those people who worked through Avatar and then onto that movie, would keep being rehired onto the subsequent movies because it makes sense. But bringing in new people who would definitely be fishing from the games world, and
sure.
um, the the very interesting part about that, I think, is that both sides, all three sides or whatever, visual effects, filmmaking, and games, all look at the elephant in a totally different way. They
Oh,
all have different cultures and different workflows and processes, and we really relied on the games people bringing their knowledge in because visual effects people weren't used to making things run in real time and
mhm,
caring, even though we would have to care about render times still.
sure.
You couldn't just throw anything into an offline renderer. Like if it says a week and your producer starts to sweat, then you have to make that time come down.
Right.
There's, it still exists in that world, but the games people are bringing in this knowledge of optimizing and making things run fast and being efficient to the nth degree, where film and visual effects professionals wouldn't go that far because it's a whole another half of a job
Sure.
just doing that. Um, so at that point, yeah, it was a lot of games people were jumping in, but no, they weren't used to the filmmaking process. So then they had a lot of that workflow and culture to get used to. So there was several culture clashes that I've witnessed between these different cultures who are very used to doing things in the way that they've done them before. And as humans, I think we're all pretty bad at change
Yeah.
generally. It causes the fear to kick off, and we're like, I don't want to do that differently. I want to do it the way I've always done it. And I think there's nobody avoids that entirely. But the beauty in bringing different cultures together and different ways of looking at things together is that that's the true essence of creativity for me. Is as I think Einstein described it as combinatorial play.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really inventing something new as such. It's more combining old things in new ways to make something new out of things. So that's basically kind of how the universe creates. There's a great book on it. I think it's called Creativity, and it's about taking it right back to molecules and atoms banging around and bumping into each other and finding valent connections that fit and making new tiny pieces, and then those pieces fit together to make other new things. There's not that many elements, and in the same way there's not that many things in the world, but the way you combine them is what creativity is about. And seeing this new workflow where we're allowing all these different things to combine and be curious about it and tolerant of it, I think is where the magic happens. And there's always a lot of resistance to it, but the beauty is in where you allow it to happen and you're tolerant of it, and that's when literally new things are allowed to be birthed. Sorry, that was again a long answer.
No, I like it. I know it's good detail. I like hearing it. It's good. Man, it's funny you say the atoms bumping into each other. I have a lot of different ideas of where to kind of direct the conversation. I'm curious about how kind of your thoughts on AI and machine learning and how it's affecting that sort of creative process. A lot of times we hear, oh, AI is going to take my job away. You got, as an example, RotoBrush 2 in I think it's After Effects. That used to be somebody's sole purpose, was to sit there and cut things out, and rotoscoping and stuff was, and now it's like double click and it's pretty good, and you touch it up and it's way faster, you could probably put that onto someone who wears multiple hats. I guess how has the advances in machine learning and AI affected virtual production and filmmaking and creativity in general?
Yeah, it's a good question. And before starting the school, I was working with a company that's an automotive company working on autonomous driving technology, which at this stage in the game, arguably probably shouldn't be called autonomous as such, but
That's
more
true.
like, responsibly, maybe more like driver assist with better driver assist than we had before. But that doesn't sound cool. So
No.
there's a lot of that in that company, and I was working with a lot of engineers that were very savvy in that, and I had to learn a lot about how that works to be able to be in the same room. So coming back to the graphical side of things, I think there's always going to be that. I think every advance that we've made as a species has always changed. Like I was just saying, change equals fear. We're biologically designed to resist change, to stay where we are because it's safe, and going to somewhere new is challenging and difficult and scary, but it's where the juice is, and I find when I'm in times where I'm not growing and taking risks, that I get more towards the sort of bored end of things, or feeling like I want to do something else and throw that career in and start another one. And I think change is inevitable as well. Like, there's no way that you can stop it. The environment is changing regardless of whether your bit of it is changing, and you can try and resist it as much as you want.
Mhm.
But it's happening. It's like trying to go down the beach and shovel the waves back into the ocean. You're not going to stop it.
Yeah.
So I think coming to terms with that is important, just in terms of the human side of it. And then the proper answer to the question, where we're talking about how's it affected the production workflows, I'd say a bit. It's emergent, and things like you mentioned, like the deep fake idea, which emerged as not a production tool, but now is being used as a production tool.
Yeah.
To do all kinds of things, from face replacement to touch up and aging and all kinds of that work, which is hard. It's very hard to do manually. If you can get it done automatically, I think personally, I think that we just have to evolve in the same way as the tools and skills evolve. So staying current with it, learning how to use them takes the fear away. Empowering yourself with the knowledge is the best way of not being scared of change. It's scary a bit to get involved with it at all, but learning about it, experimenting with it, trying it, that's the best way to become empowered and to not feel like it's taking away your job. Because I mean, that's gone on since the Industrial Revolution. People thought like, oh no, those mechanical machines are going to take away our jobs, and it did take away some jobs. But so I don't think there's anyone out there that, well, maybe one or two, but there's nobody who truly got into the business to do roto or match move or some of the MOCAP cleanup. It's that kind of stuff which is a great problem for machine learning to solve. Because AI is a term that's used a lot for machine learning, and AI is something that implies a more actual intelligence, whereas machine learning is just that machines learned how to do something very well that it can just do over and over again, and it create variation based on its inputs, but it's still a very kind of repetitive task eliminator. And I think most people don't really like repetitive tasks. So I think in a lot of ways it's good, and it's definitely helping in all kinds of things that suit that type of technology, like roto, paint, prep, MOCAP, as we were saying, that's starting to be quite effective using machine learning, extracting motion from video, and I think all of that stuff it doesn't really take people's jobs away. I think it just changes what jobs are still left to be done, because when we find the edge of something's capability, if it's a piece of machinery or software or a skill set, we then get comfortable with that and then push it a little bit more. And that edge is where, like, just around that edge is somewhere that I think you want to be, because if you're too far backwards of that, then your skill sets can be made redundant. Software changes, if you don't keep up with the latest techniques, your skills do go out of date, and it's important to keep up with it. But then new jobs emerge and new things emerge to do. So I don't feel personally scared of it, but the best way I keep myself from being scared of it is by having I'm a teacher and I run a school, but I'm also an eternal student, and being on a lifelong mission to do training myself, and every day is how I never really feel scared of where it's going. And I love seeing how things are taking away things that I don't like to do and creating new things that I do like to do. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I like it. I definitely agree. I like you said, it takes the boring part out of a lot of things and leaves so much room for the fuzzy stuff that I think human beings are really good at. The creativity, it lets humans kind of be more human.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because you don't feel that human when you're there, like doing the same thing over and over again repetitively that the machine could do. I think it's often I think that the one unfortunate part of some of that stuff being taken away is it has been a good way in previously, and learning the guts of how something works is very empowering. If you don't have to learn how it gets put together, I'm really grateful to having gone through like film, taking pictures with film and processing them on with chemicals in a darkroom. I don't miss the like lightheadedness after 8 hours of being in a darkroom, but I do appreciate what I had to go through, the number of hours it took to make a picture, as opposed to now where you do it more instantly. I think there are some things to learning some of those fundamental parts of how things come together that really do help you be able to later on change the way that something works fundamentally. You know, that's been a really great side of my career, and what I love to do is do things that they can't naturally. I love doing that. I love problem solving and creating new widgets and new ways of doing things, and then creating something cool with that. So it's, yeah, I think it really helps to go through the ranks in that way. And if it's taking all of that away, then there's probably some sort of cost to that. But yeah,
I can see that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Otherwise, if it takes match move away from me, I'm very happy. It takes roto away from me, I'm very happy.
Yeah. So as a person running a school, you mentioned that it's difficult, or it's part of a challenge, is kind of staying current on everything that you're trying to teach. How does that work? I imagine you work pretty closely with some folks at Unreal, and I imagine there's sort of a back and forth. But like, how does that look? How do you and CGPro in general, like, how do you guys stay up on this stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think one thing that really helps us in particular is that we're an independent school, and we're very agile. We're very able to change and react, and it's very easy for us to do that because we don't have a giant number of administrative hoops to jump through to make decisions and be able to react to the environment. And I think that we're very keen to keep it that way, so that we can continue to be adaptable. And actually, what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of educational institutions coming to us to train because they want to stay current and they want to learn what's going on. And we're also very in contact with the industry. We're from the industry. All of our instructors are from industry. They're all actively in the industry. So we don't because of that, people who are teaching with us, including myself, are people who are active professionals. They're not having to learn what to do first. They're doing it already and then bringing that into the school. So that really helps as well. Just the nature of the instructors that we have being active professionals, as opposed to full-time teachers.
Yeah.
I think also, as you said, the partnership with Epic, being a training partner with Epic, we're very, very we pay very close attention to what they do and what they say and how they support us. And we're fortunate in that we have that relationship with that company, with Epic Games, who are so supportive and so great with us as a partner. That helps a lot as well. I think, yeah, going back to what I said about the individual. The same thing is true for an individual as is true for a company or a family or a country even. The need to grow, I think, for everybody is annoyingly present. It's like sometimes you don't always want to grow too much all the time. You want to go in waves a little bit, but as long as you're committed to your growth, which we are very much, we're always doing training. I'm actually training today myself, and I've been in the business for 15 years, more before that, not in software and as a hobby, but like 15 years in the industry. I am run a school, teach and consult, do all kinds of things related to every day. I challenge myself to learn something new, and I always train. To me, it's not a sign of weakness for me to do training. It's a sign of strength. And every year do my taxes and I see how much money I've spent on my own training. Like, wow, I did it again. And it makes me happy. That's the best thing I could invest in. I don't invest in stuff very much. There's bits of stuff that you need and things that help with the work that I love to do, but invest in my own head, and invest in my skills and my ability to grow as an individual. And I think that's what really helps in leading the school to create that culture of learning in the school, and to be able to help others do it as well. And we tend to attract people who are already kind of on that path, and they're very hungry. They want to learn. They're the type of person that knows this is really important to learn, and they want it, and they're maybe frustrated with teaching themselves, which was the same for me when I got into visual effects. I was teaching myself, and it was very slow, and sometimes I didn't know if I was learning the right things, and I'd get into problems with it and get stuck. And what we help with as a school is helping people past that and go really far, really fast. It's a kind of accelerated growth program, and all the training that I do myself, I look for is the same type of thing. We're very fortunate to have good relationships with people like Epic Games, who are very supportive, and they like I said, I'm training with them today and next week, and that we pay attention to that because we want to stay current. And it's so all of those things together, I think, really help us to stay current. And as I said, is not to brag, but no, we do have a lot of educational institutions that come to us to learn to stay current themselves. So that's, I'd say, the main people that come and work with us are filmmakers, visual effects professionals, and educators.
That's gonna feel really good. I mean, I think I would be really proud to know that, that some other college or whatever is coming to me to be like, hey, how do you guys do this? Because I just would be really neat. I think that's
I'm tremendously proud of it, and shocked and humbled by it whenever it happens. But yeah, it's real. I love it because I love doing it. I love being able to work with people who want to improve, who want to grow, who want to take on something new, and are daring. I respect the people that work with us so much because they take time out of their lives to invest in themselves, and I just it's so satisfying to me to see it when it happens. It's the best job in the world for me.
Cool. Right on. So we have maybe eight or so minutes left for our hour here, and I'm curious, what are you most excited about? So kind of two parts in the near term, so like maybe in the next year or so, and then also a little bit more medium term, like maybe 5 years.
Sure. In the near term, well, just very close to home, I'm very excited about the new courses that we have coming out. We have our advanced classes, which we're running. So we've Unreal for Filmmakers class, which is an 8-week course, which really takes people from nothing or intermediate all the way through to making their own short film. And it's very inspired by the fellowship from Epic, helping people to create their own piece of work in a short period of time and skill up at the same time. But the advanced classes that extend from that, we have classes in being stage operators and a tech artist on stage, focused on characters. We have a character focused class within real time. These are all working within virtual production. We also have a Houdini class coming up, which is for generalists, not effects artists, and that to me is they're becoming a really Houdini is becoming a really great tool for generalists to be able to do all kinds of things, and motion capture processing, and all kinds of really world building, all kinds of really useful things. It's like the best tool in USD for working with USD and generating it and manipulating it, even better than a lot of Pixar's own tools. They actually use it very heavily now for that. I'm very excited by where USD is going as that extends into Omniverse and things which are what's happening now is everything's becoming very interconnected, where traditionally a pipeline was very linear. One thing would get passed on to the next thing, and if you wanted to undo it, you go all the way back to the beginning and then repeat all those steps. Now everything's becoming much more interconnected. So I'm very excited about all the technologies that are underpinning that, from USD to rampant increases in cloud tech and being able to connect things in the cloud more easily using virtual workstations and kinds of cool stuff. So kind of branching out from what I'm excited about in our school with these new courses coming out, which are really designed to make the most of this new type of workflow that's going on, predominantly the real-time stuff and the generalism. I'm I'm very excited by the advances in real time. The increase from Unreal 4 to Unreal 5 is, I think, got the world's attention, and we have an Unreal 5 workshop coming up around that, which is a kind of conversion workshop if you're already used to 4, and then we're at the appropriate time we'll push more of the 5 content into our flagship courses. But I'm very excited about Unreal 5 because it's particularly with the indirect dynamic indirect light with Lumen, and the nanite is incredible as well. I think particularly the way that lighting has really improved in 5. I think is we're going to see more and more and more final pixel coming out of the game engine, which is very exciting. So, and just the increase in hardware and some of the things that NVIDIA and particularly NVIDIA, but a lot of the hardware manufacturers are doing with creating hardware that accelerates all of this to the point where you can do it in real time. That's really where the capability comes from, the software and the hardware together. That's why this virtual production moment in time is happening, because of all of the convergence of the growth in those areas. I'm really excited to see where this all goes. I'm very happy to be working in real time, not having to wait for my renders and being able to collaborate with people more directly in visual effects has always been wonderful to me, but somewhat isolating, and I feel like we're in a moment of change where it's almost coming back to being a bit more human, and I'm excited about that as well. The human side of it improving. There's probably tons of other things that I'm excited about, but there's a number of things that are kind of now. Next week, this weekend we start a new course. We actually have a couple of places left in it if anyone wants to join us. But I'm excited about Sunday starting that. I'm excited about the next couple of years when I kind of know what's coming with Unreal 5 and the improvements in Houdini and Omniverse, seeing what that's capable of, and USD. And then further out than that, it's very, very hard to imagine what this is all going to look like in 5 years' time, because 20 years ago, maybe I had a bit more of an idea about that. The pace of change, I think, is increasing. The rate of change is increasing. So I don't know. I would. It always kind of makes me smile when people make predictions about where this is the future, or like where this is going, or whatever. Because we just have no idea. We really don't. We can make wild guesses, but I'm just generally excited because I can see the trend, and I'm excited with what I'm doing right now, and I'm excited to help other people become empowered with that in the face of where visual effects is changing, and if we can help people get on board, that's the most excited I can be these days, is just seeing that in another person, and seeing it genuinely help their life. And seeing people who have been in the business for 30 plus years suddenly get really excited all over again. Like maybe they got a little, bored of it after that long, for want of a better way of saying it. And now it's really, really just invigorating the people and their careers. And that's aside from all the tech stuff, which is of course exciting, the human side of it, I think, is the most exciting part to me in a way.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Man, I have one more question. If you have a little bit more, 4 minutes.
Yeah, so, I can stay on. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because you mentioned Omniverse, and that kind of made me think of like metaverse and all of this sort of Web 3.0 gets tossed around a lot, and and virtual reality and this and that. I'm curious, do you think, and maybe you've seen this angle, but do you think that storytelling and filmmaking is going to evolve from a sort of passive experience where you're just kind of watching, you're kind of in this, you're being taken along on this ride. Do you think that it will evolve into more of an interactive experience for an audience?
Yes, it is already. There's a number of examples of that where um, a friend of ours, Hasdalul, is
Oh yeah.
Hasimation is his company, and he's doing some amazing, groundbreaking stuff in real-time filmmaking as an independent filmmaker. And also, at the moment, he's making a game and a movie at the same time out of the
Right.
same product, the same IP, which is super cool. Like, so it's being done. I said that on the Lion King, like, why don't we make something? Why don't we make something out of this? Because no one's ever going to see the previs. Like, I can't even put it on my show reel. It's in some Disney vault somewhere. Um, I was at the time saying, like, we should. Obviously, it wasn't going to happen because everyone was stressed and busy trying to make a movie.
Right.
But I'm like, we could. There's this whole world of Lion King now that exists that runs in real time in VR. Can't we like do something with that and give it to people and give people that same kind of experience? Obviously I know that it takes tons of work to go from that trivial statement to an actual thing that you can give to people that's
Sure.
good, but it's amazing now to see people that has doing that with his work. And I think we're just going to see more and more and more of that, where movie franchises have always made games
Mhm.
off the back of them, but they've always been a completely separate company and asset set and everything. And what we're trying to do on Lion King was using USD sort of prematurely to encapsulate assets and put the previous asset in a bundle with the final asset and maybe some stages in between, so that you could kind of like dial up the final version of the environment, but you
Mhm.
could still capture all of your layout and stuff for the previous state, kind of like a LOD kind of situation. But um, yeah, I feel like now, with especially seeing people actually doing it, like people like Has actually doing it, they are actually reusing the same assets and developing these things at the same time. I think what we saw with VR was everyone feeling like this was going to change the way that movies are consumed, and there was
Mhm.
that massive, amount of excitement at the beginning, 6 years ago or whatever, at the beginning of the new wave of it. But people felt like all movies. I think humans tend to feel like when something new comes along, that it's going to get rid of everything that existed before and become
Yeah.
the future. And like uh, it doesn't really tend to work like that. No, the VR didn't change the way that movies are made or consumed. That we're still looking at them in rectangles. But there are still things being made in VR. But I think it's just a yes, and there's for a long time there's going to be the need for. Well, I don't know about everybody else, but I know that I've so much going on running a business, having two young children, a bunch of other things as well, that when I sit down and watch a movie, I don't want to control it.
Right.
I don't actually really want to control it. I often watch the same movie I've seen 100 times. I'm sort of sad to admit that, but I want to break,
Yeah.
I want to turn my brain off for a second. So I think there's always going to be that need for passive consumptive media, but also there are times when I do want to get involved in it. I'd love to reach in there and interact with it a little bit. Maybe when my kids are a little older, I want that even more. But yeah, I just think it's yes and like
Mhm.
I think every new wave of tech that comes in, people say the same thing every time. Like, this is the future, and that's going to get rid of these jobs and this way of doing things, and it never does. Like, but we go through the same trap every time. Like, I feel like we don't learn from that. But yeah, trying to pull back from it and be objective about it. I think that there's a case for both. I am proof in point. Like, I don't want to control my movie right now. Maybe in 3 years' time, I will be all over that. But there's so many people like me that just want to sit there and watch a movie, and
Mhm.
there's so many people that want to play the game. And I think another thing that I would cite in this example is the Matrix, the recent Matrix movie and game demo and movie clip that was made based on the game engine. Like that whole thing, I was talking about it to someone yesterday, that whole thing together was also the same kind of thing. In the same moment, they released a movie. They made part of that movie in the game engine. The scene on the lake with the dojo, that was actually made in Unreal Engine, at least the environmental piece. They also made a playable version of a Matrix-like world for the PlayStation that ran on the PlayStation. This is not like a $15,000 machine. It's a hundreds of dollars machine, and it ran on that. And then they also made a little short movie out of it that looked similar to the original movie, proving that humans can start to look really good even in real-time CG, and the environment and the lighting and everything has kind of come to that point where like that was a perfect case, whether you like the movie or not. I think it was a perfect case for seeing how all of that can come together. And they even took it a step further, which I think I congratulated them for taking the risk of cross-referencing all of those pieces and making it into, they were really trying to go really meta on it. And I think it, it succeeded in some of those ways, and cross-referencing all these things and making you, like in the short clip of a few minutes of animation from the PlayStation, they said, how do you know what's real? Those kinds of lines where people were watching it, they didn't know that the characters initially weren't real. And that's for whatever you could criticize it for, that was real and made people actually react in that way. And that's never really happened before. And to have all those things connected together and cross-referencing each other and being made at the same time, I think is and everybody with the playable version on the downloadable playable version on PlayStation 4, 5 was saying that they wish there was more to the game, like they would actually want it to be a full-on game. And yeah, I just feel like because it's becoming capable of housing assets from movie grade assets now, there's much more the case for not having to create these two things completely separately.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like why? And I feel like there's almost no reason not to. You've done all of the work to make these beautiful environments, these beautiful assets, and it's already in a game engine that has all of the tools and stuff built in to make it a game. I mean, it practically is a game. You're just only recording from one kind of hard viewpoint, I guess. So why not? It's right there. I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than I think it is, but it seems like you're already halfway there.
Yeah, you really have to want it and care about it, which is where the Matrix epic, production company relationship came in, because they wanted it. They wanted to do it, just like Disney and Jon Favreau wanted to have a crack at the Mandalorian and doing that in that way. You got to and you have to be sort of very entrepreneurial to do something like that and take that risk. The Lion King is again an example of that. It was like big risk in trying to pull that thing off. It was calculated, so some precedent, but yeah, it definitely involves you wanting to do it. In general, people usually individually or in business, they want to do things somewhat the way they did it before because it's safe and they understand it. But doing something, there's another challenge which I try and set myself every day. Do something that scares me a little bit every day, because I think when you're doing that, you're growing. If you're not scaring yourself a little bit, you're not really growing. Not really. If it doesn't scare you, there's either like emotionally don't react in the same way as most people, or like you're lying to yourself. I think if it doesn't scare you a bit, then you're not in the path of growth. And I think it's really important to remember that, whilst you could criticize some of these experiments that people are doing at that level, they are taking risks and they're trying to do something new, and it should be I wish, as a culture, I wish we celebrated people missing the mark more, because it's not just about whether it made billions of dollars or became a successful business. The fact that someone tried in the first place, that's the important part, is just having a go. I mean, there's tons of things that don't work out, but like, I'm always really, like, I see things that I don't like. I used to maybe put them down a bit more when I was younger, but if I see something I don't like now, I try and think, I'm really glad that that person's doing that, because I might not like it, but because they're doing it, I know that there's all kinds of people out there trying all kinds of different stuff, and that's how we're going to improve in general as a culture, and as in whether it's in media or health or whatever it is. It takes people doing things that are a bit crazy, that are risky, that feel wrong, and that people are going to put down like nothing else when it first appears. Every great invention that when it first arrived, it was really heavily criticized and mocked, and people were even killed for it. I kind of wish, as a culture, we'd be a little bit more celebratory of the try as opposed to the result, because I think that's the sort of the main thing you want to aim for in a lot of ways. But I'm the same way. I'm resistant to change, and I'm very human in that way. But trying to observe it and trying to know when I'm doing it because I just want to be comfortable, or when sometimes you can change too much too, and exhaust yourself or burn yourself out. So it is a balance. You have to not do something so crazy that you risk your very existence all the time. It's exhausting and discouraging sometimes. So somebody tried to explain it to me once, saying that you should be 4% outside your comfort zone.
Oh, okay.
So if you take nothing away from today other than that, then be 4% outside your comfort zone. And if you can figure out what that means, then come back and tell me, because I don't know what it means. But to me, it means like just being a bit outside your comfort zone, not 100% outside your comfort zone where it's scary and you might die. That's not necessarily a good thing either. Just managing it. It's an art, I think, taking enough risk as an individual to know that you're doing it in a sustainable way. And it's important to do it a bit, though. If you don't do it at all, you end up with a different set of problems.
Yeah.
And it's better to be in control of that, I think. Take some risks.
I like it. I think that is a great message to end on. This is super good. Thank you so much. That was really cool.
Yeah. You're welcome.
And thank you so much, Ed, for joining us today. This was really fun. I really appreciated your insight.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
I was just going to leave you a link there in the chat if you want to post that to anyone, just in case anyone is interested in what we do. There's a link to our website.
Thank you. Bam, for everybody out there. I'll also be putting all that in this for the school and other links for yourself in the YouTube description for the recording of this as well. So I always like to thank the audience as well for joining us today. We do this every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Pacific. We are slowly transitioning to a more of a pre-recorded sort of format with occasional live content like this. So just be aware of that. But it will be still broadcast on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. And so thank you so much, Ed, for joining us today. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks very much for having me. I'm glad to be one of the live ones. I enjoyed it.
This was cool.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right. And we'll see you all next time. Bye.